YouTube channel. My name is Hope Taylor, and I'm here with Sacia Matthews today, who's an incredible wedding and boudoir photographer and educator based here in Charleston, and I'm really, really excited about the conversations we're gonna have today. Thank you for coming and joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, of course. So to start, I just want you to share a little bit about like who you are, your business, how you got started, tell everybody all the things because you're wildly talented and impressive.
Well, that is a huge compliment coming from you.
Well, you're sweet.
So yes, I'm Sacia. I'm based here in Charleston. I'm a former high school English teacher turned destination wedding photographer, and it's been kind of the craziest ride of my life the last 4 years, but I love it. Now I do all the things here in Charleston. I actually just moved here finally. I was living in Myrtle Beach. Now we're here, and I'm just really passionate about telling stories. I like people and I like storytelling, and I like the anthropology side of life.
I love it. No, that's such a good way to describe your style.
Yeah, I'm just like inspired by details and things that inspire other people and architecture and all these like lame things, but
not lame.
But yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. No, I remember when I first started following you, like your detail work is amazing. Like I remembered you for your details, and like the way that you shoot is so detail oriented. It's so pretty.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna link her stuff below. You should totally follow her on Instagram and follow all the things. But we are gonna have a really good conversation today that I'm really excited about. We talked about this video back in like May, and then I didn't film because I'm a horrible person, and then our schedules just didn't line up for the last few weeks. But we're gonna talk today about diversity in the photography industry, which is obviously an issue that has become, I feel like more and more, it's always been an issue, but I think it's becoming more and more prevalent and being brought to light in a way that it hasn't in a really long time. And I think that this conversation is really, really important. And so I have a few questions we're gonna talk about, but for this video, I've already talked to Sacia about this, but I am very much learning today. Like this is something I have failed at in my business time and time again, something I haven't been near as intentional about as I should be, something that I'm actively working on, but very much still have a lot of place to learn. So this video today is very much gonna be Sacia has the mic, and I'm really excited to just hear from her. And I've talked to you about this already, but like Sacia is not speaking for an entire race of people. She's not speaking for any group of people. She is speaking from her own experience and on her own behalf. And I just value your opinion so much. She's such a talented business owner, such an amazing educator. You've written about this topic on your blog. I'm gonna link one of her most recent posts below that I read and got so much out of. So I'm really excited to talk about like all of this stuff today. And so the first question that we talked about is that I just want to hear from you what your thoughts are on like diversity in the photography industry right now. Like where do you see the issues? What do you think about it just as a whole as things are starting to come to light?
Yeah, so even like we were saying before we got started, it's such a layered issue and such a layered topic, so it's hard to even know what's like most pressing down to like least, or a combination of what everything is. Like it's just a lot. So for me, the issue falls in two places. Like the main things that are troubling to me about the state of where things are right now within our industry is definitely centered around equity and inclusion of vendor teams, making sure that vendor teams are equally aligned, and making sure that vendor teams reach a variety of people and not just this one set of person. And of course we can get into what that means. But then on the other side, like we discussed, the tastemaker thing. There's so many people in this industry that we look to for advice, for inspiration, and that could be in the form of places like Pinterest or Instagram, whatever. But then also people, and then also publications, like these places where we look for all the things. And there is a true lack of inclusion, not just for race, but for sexualities, for religions and different cultures. But things are changing, and I think a lot of good has come this year, but those are the two issues that I think are most pressing.
Yeah, and this was surprising to me because when we started, we talked about obviously everything before we started filming, and I was expecting one of the most prevalent issues to be diversity in actual photography portfolios. Like looking at the industry from my perspective, I'm like, that's a clear issue that needs fixing. But then as I have been trying to educate myself, and as I've talked to you today, I realized that there's so many layers to it that we don't think about on a surface level, right? Like the publications, the tastemakers, which I love that that's what you call it, like those are all things that need to change. And so you kind of already touched on it, but as we as a photography industry, where do you feel like we have failed you most on a diversity level? Like, just share with us a little bit about that.
Well, I won't even, well, first of all, everything is connected, right? So like, I love that you say you thought that that was the issue, that there wasn't enough diversity in the portfolios. But the thing is that's because the tastemakers aren't showing that, and we don't feel like it's pressing to have it in our portfolios.
Right.
Well, now that some of the tastemakers are showing it, and now it's a pressing need to have in the portfolio, which is a whole other can of worms, because then that can turn into tokenism and like all these things, and it's hard to know like what's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
I don't even think that I can say that the industry has failed me. I think that that might be too harsh of a judgment for me.
Okay.
Just solely because, and that's based on the fact that I, as a Black woman, already knew that I was going to have to dig and carve my way way differently than a white person would have to in this industry.
Yeah.
The bigger issue is that the industry kind of took something from me in terms of like when I was a bride, like more so. When I was a bride, it was really tough for me. It was tough for me to find vendors, and it was tough for me to have a real clear vision of what my wedding could potentially look like, because everywhere that I was searching for inspiration, none of them had weddings that had families that looked like mine, or had brides featured that looked like me, that I could identify with and be like, ooh, yes, I want this, and this feels authentic to me. And I was a new business owner when I was planning my wedding. I had just left teaching and was just starting my career, and it was like the best thing that ever happened, I think, because in going through that experience as being somebody who's different than the traditional bride that's being shown a lot of times in the media, it gave me like such insight into what other couples could be facing when they're looking for vendors. And to me, it pointed out such a huge flaw in this industry that was designed to celebrate love, that we really weren't celebrating everybody. And so that just kind of really shook me, and really then started my passion in talking about, okay, you need to have a diverse portfolio, but furthermore, you need to make all people like signal instantly that they are welcome in your world, in your business
it's
world.
a safe space. Because that's what your blog post was about, that I read, that I loved. And it's just, sometimes we hear people in the industry talking about like, you need to add diversity in your portfolios, you need to make people feel welcome, but we don't really hear like why. Like obviously, like the principle of that makes sense, but like, how does that actually make somebody feel when they can't find themselves on your website? So hearing that, like even for me, I'm like, that is so powerful. I cannot imagine what somebody would feel like if they went to my website and just didn't feel welcome. And there's areas of that I'm still failing in and have a lot of work to do on. And the next country we're going to talk about is the perfect segue, is when you as a Black woman are looking for a vendor to work with, when you were looking for wedding vendors, what exactly were you looking for? What did make you feel welcomed and like safe and excited to work with somebody?
Yeah, I absolutely love everything you just said, because it's spot on. Like, and I even still think about it now, like when I think about my website, when anytime I sit down to change copy or change out an image or whatever, I'm constantly thinking like, I'm not even thinking about ideal client, just anybody who walks through my business doors, which my website is my business store, do they know that they will be celebrated here? And that's like the root of everything that I was looking for when I was going. There were people, different vendors' websites that I went to, and I fell in love with their work. I knew that they were wildly talented, and it did not matter whether they were white, Black, female, male, like anything. Like, I fell in love with their work, but I couldn't like get a read on, would I feel comfortable in their presence? Would they make my family and friends feel welcome? There were some times where I would go to a website, a photographer's website, and they'd have a wedding party image. And some of the wedding party members looked like anxious or tense. And I'm like, is that because like the photographer didn't do a good job of making them feel comfortable? And that's even like for anybody, that should be like something you look for. Like, do people actually look genuine happy when they're taking these images? So I'm looking at that aspect. I'm looking at their language. You know, do they have a website that's very bride focused? When brides aren't the only people that get married, do they have language that lets me know that they accept not that they accept as a client, like I think you should have an ideal client, but do they understand that like love transcends everything? Like it's not about your background, like they celebrate everybody. I was looking for those messages, and it was very rare in the South that I found those messages.
No, that makes total sense. And even as you're saying that, I'm like, I have so many things on my website to fix, because I just assume that, like, yes, it's bride focused, but that's just kind of the trend of the industry, is like to be bride focused. But I always say, from like a strategy standpoint, when I'm teaching about like Instagram and social media, perception is reality. And so if somebody's perceiving your website as bride focused or as not inclusive on any layer, they're going to assume they're not welcome. Even if on my end I'm like, I welcome anybody, their perception is going to be totally different.
Well, I'll give you even a real life example as a business owner, a mistake that I made very early on. The very first lesbian couple that I booked, I was so excited for, but I knew that there were some things that needed to change. When they sent me an inquiry, I was like, oh my gosh. At that point, it was like, I was like, oh my God, like there are so many messages here that might make them feel uncomfortable. Like I'm constantly only talking about bridegroom.
Right.
And then I sent them their contract, and it didn't even faze me, but I sent them the contract, and on the name slots, it had bride and groom. They signed it, and it didn't even register to me until it got back. And I was like, oh, I literally like sent them this long message. I was like, I am so sorry. Like I failed you in that moment. But I promise you that you are safe here, and that I think you are just as valuable as anybody else. Like, so then that even made me go in and change like contracts to like partner, or making sure that, you know, I'm sending, if it's 2 grooms or if it's 2 brides, like I'm making those adjustments. Like you just really have to be cognizant more than anything. Like you have to be aware that we have been trained to think about life as black and white.
But in
like,
our own experiences.
In our own experiences, right? But like that's not the reality of the world.
That's
if you're going to serve everybody, if you're going to openly serve everybody, then you have to be completely cognizant of where your biases may be, or where your failure may be in serving everybody.
Because even hearing you say all of this, I'm thinking, when I'm looking at my website, I'm thinking in terms of images. I'm like, what can I show to make people feel like they're welcome? But the verbiage and the wording is just as important. The messaging, like there's just so many layers to needing to intentionally think about, like, okay, how many different people can approach my website, and will every single one of them feel welcome here? So I now have a lot of things I'm going to go change. So, no, seriously, like that was genuinely so helpful. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about this already, about not just diversifying your portfolio, that that's not the only issue, and that there's so many other layers of needing to address diversity in your small business. And I know we touched on it, but I would love for you to elaborate on that, because it's, as somebody who doesn't photograph a lot anymore, and I'm doing a lot more like education and speaking and influencer stuff, there's still a lot of ways for me to be intentional about this that I never thought about until I started kind of educating myself more.
So yeah, that's actually a really great point. Vendor referrals are like one of the biggest ways that you can help create like equity across this industry, right? Like in the people that you refer, when like I see posts all the time in Facebook groups where people are like, oh, like who's your favorite educators, or like who do you like want to hear from, who should be a guest on my podcast, like things like that. Refer your friends that fall into quote unquote different, or that aren't like this traditional box. And I want to preface this by saying you always want to refer people based on merit and not any other box, for lack of better words, right? Like it's all about choosing people based on merit. But the problem is that we all have these like unconscious biases that sometimes prevent us from thinking about somebody who might be in another box. And we just don't think about bringing them to the spotlight. The quickest way to create equity is by thinking outside of the box about the people that you refer. You know, for wedding planners, that could look like, you know, diversifying the photographers that you seek out. Like if you're really referring based on who your client would connect with the best and who fits with the best, like you will find an array of photographers in all shapes, sizes, colors, backgrounds, sexualities, like everything, right? So diversifying that and making sure that you are making a conscious effort to find people that might be in these other groups that you can pull in and help elevate.
Yeah.
Because like you as a white woman, you have a level of privilege that I don't have. You have a level of access that I don't have.
Yeah.
But even by like doing this YouTube, you are extending your range to me, which helps lift me up, which is something that we should do for all of our friends anyways, right? Like if you have any kind of like privilege or influence, you should be lifting up those around you so that we all can be equitable to each other. So that's the biggest way, is through, not biggest way, that's a huge way, is through vendor referrals. And creating like inclusive vendor teams and relationships. Seeking out other vendors in your area, like creating these new networks and friendships, because believe it or not, everybody refers to everybody, right? I have friends that might need your services, and I'm going to refer to you if I think that you're a great fit. And the bigger you can cast your network, the more relationships that you can make, which then gives you different lived experiences. You're learning things from me because I have a different lived experience from you, and I learn things from you all the time because you have a different lived experience than I do. So those things are important. And finally, making sure that when you find somebody that you love, whether that's an artist, a photographer, like anybody, a planner, like whatever, when you find somebody who is different than you, but that you know can serve your clients well, like share their stuff on social media. Like tell people about them. A lot of times we find these people, we follow them and we silently support them, but like that doesn't really help anybody.
That's so true. That's so true.
Like you need to literally tell people about them, like just open your mouth and say like, hey, this person is great, I support this person. Like over the summer there were so many lists and things like that came out about brands to support and businesses to support, like Black businesses. Like, I mean, I'll be honest, I was on a couple and it was huge. It made a huge impact. Like I think I gained like 1,200 followers.
Wow, that's amazing.
Over like the course of a couple of days, like just based off of those lists and things that were circulating. So opening your mouth to highlight and lift somebody else up is huge.
No, I love that. And that's so true of any small business, right? Like you should be engaging with and supporting and encouraging and elevating the people around you that are doing amazing things. So I love that. That's so helpful. And I think too, one of the biggest things for me that kind of falls under like vendor referrals is collaborations, because I'm not really super active in the wedding industry anymore, but when I am looking for somebody to collaborate with, I never used to think like I need to analyze every person that's a part of this collaboration. I need to make sure that there's a diversity of people that are represented here. So I just didn't think about how I needed to be super intentional about making sure that every single person involved in a collaboration that I agree to, or a promotion that I agree to, or an affiliate thing that I agree to, was setting up an audience and a group of people that I was proud to represent. And that was not something that I even thought about before, which I like hate even saying, but I just, like you were saying, we think from our own experiences, and I never thought to go back and analyze, and that's changed a lot for me this year. So for people that aren't photographers, I think those are other great ways to just be really intentional about who you work with. I mean, I also struggled with that before, but I have I'm a little bit more cognizant about it since the beginning. But one of the things that I even say, like anytime we connect with planners or like anybody for our business, a client, is that, and I think it's even on my website, it better be on my website, is that we have a really strong focus on having equally aligned vendor teams, which means I really value who you're also bringing to the table, and I want to make sure that they value me as well. Love that.
Like not just for the work that I do, but like me as a person. So I do ask to see like vendor lists, who's the planner. Like I want to know these things so that I can build the relationship, but also so that I can verify for myself that this is a collaboration that I do want to be a part of, that I will be valued, and that it won't drain my energy. Because we've all worked in situations like that. And in this climate, it's just too important now. Like you've got to know who you're supporting, who you're spending money with, who you are giving promotion to, because all vendors are not created equal. And are not serving all clients appropriately. And so that's a huge thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just in the world of small business in general, the people that you promote and work with and are willing to talk about represent you. Like you are representing them by talking about them and referring them and sharing them.
All related.
Yeah, and I take that very seriously. And I've now started to learn like the value of making sure diversity is a huge piece of that.
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
off. No, go ahead.
But and even further, making sure that like, I'm not saying that you have to be super vocal about every topic and you don't have to share your views all the time, but you better have somewhere that somebody can go and fact check that you support equality as a whole.
Right.
And it was really disappointing over the summer to see vendors that I was in the past admiring and you know, thought that they were so amazing to just go silent, to have educators that we've invested money with just go silent on these topics that are so important. And so for me, it's one of the things I look for. And I don't mean look for like, I'm not going to scroll back months and months and months to see this.
You shouldn't
one.
have to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to do that. You should be regularly signaling to everybody that stops on your website, on your social media, that you know you understand what's going on and that you're going to support all people.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's actually the perfect transition, because the last question we were going to talk about is that there are so many photographers that I've talked to, and I think you said you've talked to too, who feel like their heart's in the right place. They want to start making a difference and being intentional about this in their business, but they are just so scared to say the wrong thing. Because again, we are coming from our own personal experiences. A lot of us don't know the right thing to say or the right thing to do to make sure that we're supporting diversity and inclusivity in our businesses. And so to close out the video, if you have any thoughts on that, or just practical ways that we can like right now make a difference, like what are some steps we can take to make sure that we're moving in the right direction of making a change?
Yeah, so that's actually the exact reason why I wrote that blog post, because I was like, I've got so many people that were DMing me and they were saying, I don't know if what I'm saying is the right thing. And I think we talked about you don't want to like do the wrong thing or make the mistake. But one of the things that I actually say is make the mistake. Yeah. It is so much better for you to make the mistake and grow from it than to just stay completely silent, because silence equals complicit at this point. One, make the mistake, have the conversation. I think it's as simple as, even if you make a post, a statement on your page, an Instagram story, like whatever you feel comfortable with, but have the dialogue of it's something that matters to you. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm going to mess up, but I want you guys to also hold me accountable and invite people to walk the journey with you. Right? Like this video is you inviting everybody to walk the journey with you, because of course people are obviously going to hold you accountable now because you're having these conversations. So they're going to want to make sure that everything you do going forward backs up all of this, which is important. And it brings such a dynamic. Like I admire people who can just put it out there and say, listen, I'm flawed, but I know that there's an issue and I want to be better. And then they're going to go and do the work to be better. Doing the work means checking your biases. We all have an unconscious bias. Like that's not even up for debate. Literally every single person has an unconscious bias. So you've got to take inventory on that, which is what we talk about in the blog post. Take inventory of these biases, bring them to light, so that you can recognize when they show up and you can do better from there. Do the hard work of research and educating, and go online, like join groups, join book clubs, like do as much as you can that gives you kind of a new perspective on different lived experiences. We all do not live in the same world, which is part of what makes it great. But there's so many resources out there. Don't drain your friends. For your emotional, for the emotional labor. Like it is draining. I'm not saying don't ask questions, but you do the hard work as well. People take notice of that. And when you come across something that's good, that's relatable, that talks about an issue, share it with your followers. Like these are all ways that you can signal without actually just coming out and saying the same things over and over again. What you share, what you post, what you share about your journey, when you come across a new person, like all of these things are just little tweaks that you can make that signal to people that you're on this journey too, and that you are trying to be better so you can support all people.
Right. No, that was all so helpful. And I think too, it's important to know that it's not just adding like a black couple to the homepage of your website.
Yes.
Like it's
so much more.
It's so many tiny little interactions. And for me, I did speak up a little bit during that time period, and I tried to share stories and share my thoughts. And I, as a type 3 Enneagram, like I had to be very open to criticism, and I had to just know like this is going to open the door to people being like analyzing everything I'm doing, asking questions, wanting me to do something differently. And I had to be receptive to like, no, they're trying to help. Like they are literally trying to educate me and teach me. And so when I would get those DMs of somebody that was like, actually, that was not the right way to do that, I had to be like, you were right. Like I didn't even try to explain like, no, this is what I meant. It's more of a needing to be receptive to like, you know what, I didn't think about it that way. And so I think that you mentioning, my point in saying that is you mentioning that like, you're opening up to making a mistake. You are, but that's important. Like that's the important part is like opening yourself up to somebody DMing you and saying like, hey, actually that was offensive and that's not how you should have said that.
Exactly.
And it's like, it hurts your ego a little bit, but then you're like, this is growth. Like this is the baby steps that need to be happening.
You got it. It's all growth. Like that's like going forward at this point, like honestly, I'm not interested in having a back and forth with people about stuff. Like, because at this point you either get the premise of everything or you don't. So at this point I'm just interested in seeing growth, accountability, and continued growth, not just I made a post, I said it, you can do with it what you want. No, I made a post, I said it, now here's how I'm making the changes.
No, I love that. And I'm just so grateful you're willing to have this conversation. Like this means the world to me, and I know that so many people are going to walk away with so much helpful knowledge from this. And I'm linking that blog post that she kept mentioning below. It is so worth the read. We were literally shooting a wedding together the day you posted it, and I read it like on my drive. I was so excited. It was so helpful. I mean, it's so valuable.
I'm really glad to hear that.
So tell them where they can find you, because you absolutely need to follow Sacia. She is literally just absolutely incredible.
So you can follow me on Instagram at Sacia Matthews. I'm sure Hope will spell that out for you because most people don't spell that right. I'm on Pinterest, Instagram, all the places you can probably find me. So
love it. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.